now up to Daf Chaf Aleph Amid Beis, the Mishnah on top of the Amid. Al Shnei Chodoshim Mechalim Es HaShabbos. We're going to permit the Eidim who have to testify that they saw the Levana B'Chidusha to walk, travel Chutz L'Tchum, violate Yisud Tchumin for the sake of the mitzvah of Kiddush HaChodesh, so that Beis Din, based on their testimony, can be Makadosh L'Chodesh. Al Nisan V'al Tishrei. For these 2 months of Nisan and Tishrei, Shebahem Shluchim Yotzim L'Suria. We'll send out shlichus of Beis Din all the way to Syria to notify the Bnei Agola when exactly Chodesh was determined. Were they kover the Chodesh on the 30th because the previous month was Chaser, or on the 31st because the previous month was 30 days Molin. Ubahem, on these 2 months, Misaknin Es HaMoados. The Moadim of this year are dependent upon the Kiddush HaChodesh, whether it's on day 30 or day 31. And these are the Moadim of Rosh Hashana, Yom Kippur, Sukkot, in the case of Tishrei, and of course Pesach, and also Shavuos, because we count the Omer in the case of Chodesh Nisan. So Shluchim have to go out during these months to be Kovea, that the Bnei Gola should know exactly what is the Zman for the Moadim. These are very important months, and it's roy to be Mechalel, the Shabbos, in order to Kovea the Moadim in their proper time. On the other months, however, there are no Moadim that depend upon the Kiddush HaChodesh, whether it's on day 30 or 31. And we really don't care one way or the other whether the previous month was Moleh or Chaser and Midin Torah. We don't have any concern or any pressing need to be Machal Shabbos for the other months. Now, we're going to see soon, and we mentioned it in the past, that there is a difference between Bizman Beis Hamikdash Kayim and after the Churban Habayis. During the Beis Hamikdash, when it stood, we needed to know every single month when is Rosh Chodesh in order to bring the Karbanos of Musafim, the special Karbanos of Rosh Chodesh. However, after the Churban, that's not necessary, and what we're left with is the pressing, urgent need for Kiddush HaChodesh in the months of Nisan and Tishrei. The Gemara says, Al Shnei Chadoshim, for these 2 months of Nisan and Tishrei, we'll Machal Shabbos. And these are the Shluchim that go out to Syria. And it seems that only in these 2 months, the Shluchim go out to be Modia, to notify the people in the Gola and the far-flung places in the diaspora when is Rosh Chodesh for Sulo. Are you telling me that only on these 2 months we have to send Shluchim to Syria, to the Bnei Gola, Verminu? What are we going to do with the Mishnah that we learned back on Daf Yud Ches? Al Shisha Chadashim Shluchim Yotzim. We seem to have a head-on collision between the Mishnah on Daf Yud Ches and here the Mishnah on Chaf Aleph Amid Beis as to whether or not the Shluchim are sent out to the Gola for all the months or only for 2 months. And we say all the months, we mean 6 months. The Shluchim Yotzim. And when we talk about Shluchim Yotzim, we talk about Nisan, Av, El, Tishrei, Kislev, and Adar. All of these months have holidays in them. Omar Abai Hachi Kamar. This is what our Mishnah here has in mind. Al Kulan for all the months except for Nisan and Tishrei, Shluchim Yotzim Miba Erev. We send the Shluchim at night because we know that tomorrow, in the following morning, we will be Mekadosh the Chodesh. We're not going to wait until Beis Din actually is Mekadosh the Chodesh. That'll be a little bit too late. But on Nisan and Tishrei, the Shluchim go out only after they hear from the Beis Din. Ad sheyishmu mipi Beis Din ha'omrim mekudosh. So they actually sanctify the Rosh Chodesh. They don't go out at night before the Kiddush, and therefore there's no contradiction between our Mishnah, these 2 Mishnayos. The earlier Mishnah is talking about Yitzias HaShluchim, and that applies to all 6 months of the year, and the shluchim go out at night. Our Mishnah is talking about Chil Shabbos of Eidim for the purpose of Kiddush HaChodesh, and therefore our Tana teaches us that Machal as HaShabbos for the Eidim only in Nisan and Tishrei. Those are the 2 months that the shluchim are yotzim. And as we said earlier, the shluchim yotzim in the case of the 6 months, Vipa Erev. And our Mishnah again, to emphasize this over and over again, allows for Chil Shabbos only in the case of these 2 months. So the edus of the testimony of the Eidim on Shabbos has a serious toelis. Immediately we're going to send out the shluchim so that the message will get out to the Gola that such and such a day, day 30, day 31, has been sanctified as Rosh Chodesh. And this is relevant to the Moadim of those 2 months. During the time of the Bais, as we said before, the Chil Shabbos would be in effect for every single month so that they would know exactly when to bring the Musaf of Rosh Chodesh. Now, as we said before, with the exception of these special months where the shluchim go out after the Kiddush, with regard to the other months, we will send out the shluchim at night, and we will not violate the Shabbos by allowing the Eidim to come chutz tchum to testify in those months, because that Eidus is not going to speed up the process of Yitzias HaShluchim. The Shluchim are sent out already the night before the Eidim actually testify. With regard to all the months, with the exception of Nisan and Tishrei, Yotzim Miba Erev, the Shluchim are sent out at night. Al Nisan, Al Tishrei, Ad Sheyishmu Mipi, Bezdin, Mekudosh, till they hear the word Mekudosh from the Bezdin, which is, of course, during the day, and there are no shluchim going out at night. And once again, as far as Chil Shabbos is concerned, this is limited after the Churban to Nisan and Tishrei for Tikkun HaMoedos. That's urgent, and for that, we will allow the Eidim to go chutz l'tchum. Where is the source for overriding the Shabbos in order to establish the Chodesh and send out the Shluchim? It's Eila Moadei Hashem, Mikrai Kodesh Hashem Tikro Sol B'Moadim. The Torah is telling us that we have to be Korei the Moadim, call it by its name, meaning sanctify it, B'Moadim. Shalo Yavor HaMoed Shal Azman Kriyosam. The Kriya means the Kiddush HaChodesh Al Yidei Bezdin, and that's the pasuk of Mikrai Kodesh. And we will be Mechalel, the Eidim will be Mechal Shabbos for the purpose of Kriyas Zmanom, Kriya B'Zmanom. Yocham, I think, Yishem Shemechales Ad Sheyis Kadshu, Kach Mechalim Ad Sheyis Kaimu. I might think that the Eidim will violate the Shabbos in order to see to it and guarantee that the Kiddush is B'Zmanom. And I would take the next step and go further and assume that we can be Mechal, the Shluchim to Mechal, in order to notify the people that they should be Mekayim the Moadim B'Zmanom, and they'll go on Shabbos out there to the Bnei HaGola to notify them when Bezdin had sanctified the Chodesh. Al Miloma Asher Tikru Osam Al Kriyosam Atamachal V'Yatamachal Kiyuma. So we explained the Havamina very well. I think that in order to guarantee the Kiyum HaMoedos amongst the Bnei HaGola, that it should be B'Zmanom, we should allow the Eidim the Shluchim to travel out Chutz Tchum and be Mechal Shabbos for the Kiyum HaMoedos. But the Gemara says no. What we derive from this drasha is that Kriyasa, which means Kiddush, that's when the Eidim come in, and in this case Chutz Tchum, to testify in Yerushalayim that they saw the moon on such a day. So we know now which day is Rosh Chodesh. But to send out the Shluchim for Kiyum, once the month has been sanctified, we will not allow Chil Shabbos. And therefore it's also to send out the Shluchim if it entails Chilul Shabbos, in order to be Modia, the people, to notify them in the Gola when the month was sanctified. Now, Mishnah says, Kshahayu Kshay Beis Hamikdash Kai Mechalin Afal Kulam Neitikun Akar Matan Rabbanon Rishona by Mechalin Afal Kulam. When the Mikdash stood, there would be Chilul Shabbos for every single month to allow the Eidim to come Chutz Tchum and establish the Rosh Chodesh. But Mishachar Beis Hamikdash Amalem Rav Yochanan and Zakkai the Chiyesh Karban. Are we bringing the Musaf of Rosh Chodesh? What's the urgency? And therefore, we will not allow the Eidim to be Mechal Shabbos. His Kinu, Rabbi Yochanan Zakkai, and his Bezdin made a takana, Shaloyu Mechalan Ella al Nisan V'Tishrei Bilvad, only for those 2 months, in order to facilitate and guarantee that there will be Moadim Bizmanu. Now we get to the second Mishnah on Chaf Aleph Amud Beis. Our Mishnah is going to explain in what ways do the Eidim who saw the Lavana, how are they Machal Shabbos? Bein Shenira Bi'alil, whether or not the moon was seen Bi'alil, meaning B'Goliv, it was revealed, and everybody could see it. For example, let's say the moon was high up above the ground level, and it was a clear day, clear night, the Shamayim Behirim, as we call it. Bein Shelo Nir Ba'alil, or, for example, let's say the moon is close to the Aretz, and it's being blocked by the sun. And in both cases, in the translation here, in the second Mishnah on Chaf Aleph Amud Beis, he writes, Kigon, what does it mean? Shelo nira ba'olil shahaya reach karov la'aretz, and the admumis of the shemesh is machasa osa utrichim re'iyah chada. We need a very sharp and accurate sight to a vision of the moon kedei l'rosa. Oshesh hananim, or alternatively, there are lots of clouds that cover up his re'iyah. Is mechalin olav es hashabbos. In all cases, in order to encourage and allow the Eidim to come and testify, they will override Shabbos. Rabbi Yossi disagrees. Omer, im nira ba'alil, if it's clear and everyone has a view of the areach, there are no clouds, the shemesh is not aligned in a way that it blocks the view of the sun, ein mechalin olav es hashabbos. There's no need for the Eidim. Everybody sees the areach; it's right there. And certainly the Bezdin themselves in Yerushalayim saw the areach; they'll be makadish the chodesh automatically. Ma'aseh sha'avru yosem me'arboim zug. There were 40 pairs of Eidim. Sha'avru b'darkam. They were on their way lahayid to testify, and they wanted to come to Yerushalayim and testify that they saw the areach. Ve'ikvam Rabbi Akiva belad. Rabbi Akiva stopped them on their way. He understood that there was no need for their Eidos in Bezdin because, there are so many Eidim that already passed by on this route, on this road, to testify on Riyas HaEidim. Shalach lo Rabbi Gamliel. Rabbi Gamliel sent a message to Rabbi Akiva, if you're telling me that because there's no need for these Eidim, and therefore you're going to block the Rabbim, the many pairs of Eidim who want to come and testify, these Eidim are not going to come on a different occasion, on a different month. They'll see the Areach on a different month, and we need their Eidus. But they said, you know what, last time we had Eidus and nobody listened to us, nobody paid attention, they sent us home. So they're not going to come and testify another time. And then we won't be able to convey the Chodesh in its proper time. Now we get to the Gemara. The Gemara explains what is the language of Olil. Let's see if we can find a pasuk. In other words, the Mishnah says that sometimes the Areach is Ba'olil, sometimes Shelo Ba'olil, and we say that Olil means Begilui, Bepirsum, everybody could see it, it's obvious, it's revealed. So my mashpa the high alil lishna de biglehu. Where do we have a source to indicate that the word olil means golui? Omar Rabbi Avo, Omar Kra, Pasuk Tilim, Parakid Beis, Imros Hashem, Amoros, Tahoros, Kesef, Tzaruf, Ba'alil, La'aretz, Mizukak, Shivasayim. Only the Imros of Hashem are Imros Tahoros. They are pure Diburim, Imros. They are clear, they are profound, and they exist for all eternity. And they are Kesef Tzaruf. They can be compared to refined silver. Hamizukak panim rabos, v'nira ba'olil la'aretz, v'goli lakol. It's been purified time after time, and it's obvious. It's nikar line. Anyone could see it that it's goli lakol, and we see it. The word olul refers to golu. I want to read to you a note here. It says, 1 second, sorry. The words of Hashem are pure, like purified silver, clear to the world, refined sevenfold. We see that the word olil connotes clarity. Ravu Shmuel, Chad Omar, Chamishim Shari Bina Nivru Ba'olam. There were 50 gates of Bina, of wisdom, of understanding that were created in the world. And this is derived from the end of the pasuk that we mentioned earlier. The pasuk says the words of Hashem are refined sevenfold. And the Gemara thinks that Shivasayim sevenfold means 7 times 7, which of course is 49. And these are the gates of Bina. They were given to Moshe Rabbeinu. And in a different pasuk, which we'll see later on, the pasuk says that one gate of Bina was closed for Moshe Rabbeinu. He was missing that 50th gate. So we come to the conclusion that there are 50 gates of Bina. The Kula Nitnu LeMoshe Chaser Echad Shenemar Vatchasreu Ma'at Velokim. And this pasuk in Tilim is an allusion to Moshe Rabbeinu, who is just one gate, one level short of total, complete Bina, perfect Bina. And that's, you have made him only slightly wanting in understanding divinity. And the Gemara Masechet Shabbos on Peiches interprets this with regard to Moshe Rabbeinu and the gates on different kinds of methodological reasonings by which the Torah law is meant to be understood and analyzed. And Moshe Rabbeinu only achieved 49 out of the 50. That's not a bad record. He was nevertheless, could claim that he was the highest level of Bina, of understanding that human beings ever could reach. And it seems from the Gemara in Eruvin that perhaps Shlomo Melech had reached the 48th gate, but Moshe Rabbeinu reached the 49th. Okay, now we have a pasuk in Koheles. Bikesh Koheles limto divrei chefetz. Koheles sought to find words of delight. Bikesh Koheles lios kimoshe. Koheles wanted to be as brilliant, with a deep understanding, equivalent to that of Moshe, to attain and achieve all 49 gates that of wisdom that man could possibly achieve. But Yotza Basko v'Omrlo, the Kasuv Yosher Divrei Emes, the words of truth are recorded properly. And this is a pasuk in Koheles. And it refers to this idea that you cannot reach the 49th level, lo kam navi od b'Yisrael k'Moshe. So that means that even Koheles King Solomon was not granted his request to achieve the knowledge of Moshe Rabbeinu. So that's one opinion. Chad Omar, according to another opinion, In Nevi'im lo come, but b'malachim come. Even though, with regard to prophets, no one was as great as Moshe Rabbeinu, but amongst kings, there was a king that achieved the prominence of Moshe Rabbeinu and achieved perhaps the knowledge of Moshe Rabbeinu, and that's Koheles. He was a king, he was not a prophet. And therefore, this is not a contradiction to the previous pasuk, come Navi Od B'Yisrael Kemoshe. But as far as Malachim is concerned, we have someone amongst the Malachim, and that's Shlomo Melech, who indeed reached the achievement of that 49th level of Bina, of understanding, according to this second opinion. So Gemara asks, Elamani Mekayim Bikesh Koheles Limto Divrei Chayfetz. It seems that Shlomo Melech desired and requested to reach that level of 49, but he was denied. Because Koheles Ladun Dinim Shebalev Shelo B'Edim V'Shelo Basra. We're going to interpret this pasuk in the following way. Koheles sought to judge judgments using the wisdom of the heart without the testimony of witnesses. In other words, the defendant would not have to bring witnesses, and even if he didn't receive the warning, the proper asra, shalo be'edah v'shalo b'asra, nevertheless, Shlomo Melech was able to hand down a judgment in that kind of a case. So Divrei Chayfetz is understood as judgment, and Shlomo Melech sought, on the basis of his Bina, to be able to judge. He wished to judge without witnesses. Now, we require a warning for any punishment, what's called Onshei Aguf, corporeal punishment, and the purpose of the Asra is to make sure that this person who's now on trial and being accused of a criminal crime is that he was aware of the fact that this was a crime and the punishment of the crime, and yet he continued to violate the Torah law. He will be liable. And Melech Koheles, he understood that with his great chachma, he could determine whether the defendant was aware of anything that he would have to know about without even being warned. But Yotza Bas Kol V'Yomra, because of Yoshe Divrei Emes, and we have to look to the Torah for the words of truth, and the Torah says, Al Pishnayim Eidim Yokum Tov. Judgment can only be based on the edus of two witnesses. And of course, in a case of criminal justice, the defendant would have to have received a warning. We turn now to Daf Chav Beis Amud Aleph. Ma'aseh she'avru yoser me'arboim zug ve'ikvam Rabbi Akiva. Tanya, we learned to the Raisa Om Rabbi Yehuda chas v'sholom Rabbi Akiva ikvem. You cannot interpret this Mishnah on a superficial level that Rabbi Akiva withheld the Eidim and would not let them give testimony. He detained them. That's not possible. Ella shezefer rishona shel gader ikvan. There was another person who detained them, and who was that? Shezefer. He was the head of the official gader. The Shalach Ram Gamliel v'horidu migdulaso, and Rav Gamliel ordered that they depose this Shezefer from his exalted post. So although the Mishnah seems to indicate that it was Rabbi Akiva who detained the witnesses, the Brisa contends it was actually Shezefer who had detained them. Okay, this is where we'll stop for today on the top of Daf Chaf Beis. Wishing you all a Shabbat Shalom.